Good evening, everybody. If you are here for the Central Connecticut area Home Buyers Masterclass, welcome aboard. My name is Mark Mnich. I'm your Realtor host for the evening. Joining me is Nick Landell from AFC Mortgage Group. Say hi to everybody, Nick.
What's going on, guys? Super excited to be here. Thanks for joining us at 7 o'clock on what do we got, Wednesday here. So I hope everybody's having a great week.
Yep. So go ahead, folks, while we're waiting for some more people to come on in, go ahead and put in the chat exactly where you're from. Where do you live currently? So that way, just a city in town, just a city or town would be fine. And just let us know where you're coming from. We'd love to see where you're coming from. So
If everyone could do us a favor, and just go ahead and make sure that they are muted. And if you have questions throughout, feel free to unmute yourself and ask away.
yeah, either that, you can put your questions right in the chat too, and we'll try to get to them, as we were going through the webinar. We're gonna, start off, we'll start things off, with going through basically we're going to start at a higher level, and then we're going to kind of drill down into like some more specific topics as we go through the thing tonight. So, but it'll make sense as we go along. So, thank you very much. Melissa's from Hamden. Good to see you, Melissa. Where's my chat window? There we go. All right, so we got Abigail from Bethel, Robin's from Bridgeport. Hi, Robin. Delane is just from Connecticut. Velma's from Bridgeport. Melissa's from Hamden. Thank you guys for letting us know. Go ahead and we'll give a couple more minutes for some late arrivals to join us, but let's see if we got everybody here. Admit them. Awesome. Thank you so much. Connie, you're up in East Windsor. That's a nice area up there. All right. All right, Elaine from Bridgeport. Very nice. Okay. Got some more people coming in now, so make sure I pop them in real quick. And we'll get started in another minute. So how's 2026 treating everybody so far? I don't know about you folks, but I spent the first couple weeks sick as a dog, so
But he's better now.
I am better now. Yes, thank goodness. I had the worst sinus infection of my life this year. Oh my God. It's horrible. Unless it's taking it one step at a time. I hear you. All right. We got one more coming in here.
Are you able to let people in, Mark, while we're going through in case there's
Yep. I'm letting them in as we go. Yep.
in case there's some stragglers?
Mm-hmm. Yep, we are good there. One more joining right now. I'm just gonna wait for them to actually pop in here. Okay, there we go. Yep. All right. Well, we got a very good group going tonight, so I think we're gonna go ahead and get started. Thank you very much for joining us tonight, folks. Again, my name is Mark Mnich. I'm with Coldwell Banker Realty. And joining me is Nick Landell from AFC Mortgage Group. First, I want to ask you guys a question before we get started. When you're thinking about becoming a home buyer, does it make you feel stressed? Are you feeling concerned at all? Do you feel uncertain about your prospects? Do you feel kind of anxious? Let me know in the chat exactly how you're feeling about possibly becoming a home buyer. We'd like to hear what your feelings are on that. Samantha's very concerned. Robin says all the above. Melissa's a little nervous. Well, I promise you by the end of this webinar, you guys are going to feel a little less stressed, a little less concerned, and a little less nervous. So let's go on to Go on here. Here's the agenda for tonight's webinar. We're going to first of all talk about exposing some myths versus the reality that's out there. We're going to explain some of your options as a home buyer. We're also going to show you a plan on how to do it, help you decide what is best for you, and then finally, talk about the steps to make your dream a reality. So stay for our Q&A. We're going to have a Q&A session at the end, and we're also going to give you a bonus at the end if you guys stick around. So just feel free to add any questions you want during the webinar in the chat, and we'll try to get those answered as soon as we possibly can. All right?
Yep, I'll be monitoring the chat, answering any questions, and if it's something that I think could be helpful for everybody, I'll chime in.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick. All right, so first let me introduce myself. My name is Mark Mnich. As like I said, I first got my license in 2004. I've been selling real estate full-time since January 1, 2008. Red letter date in history there, folks. I'm originally from Bristol. That was a great timing to actually jump into full-time realty, and I say that with total tongue-in-cheek. Originally, I'm from Bristol. I currently live in Meriden, so right in the middle of the state. I am a realtor, which means I follow a code of ethics, prescribed by the National Association of Realtors. I'm also a husband, I'm a father, I'm a community servant, and a resident pool shark. I believe that the best advice plus the best skills equals the best results for my clients, and I've lived that way for as long as I can remember. I've been an award-winning realtor since 2016. I'm in a top 100 member in the market for the last 5 years running according to Broker Agent Advisor, and it's actually going to be 6 years running. I'm just waiting for my graphics to come in for 2025. I'm again a top 100 agent. So I also want to mention too real quick about some of the initials that you saw after my name. The ABR, that stands for Accredited Buyer Representative. The CNE stands for Certified Negotiation Expert. The CREN stands for the Certified Real Estate Negotiator, and SRS also means Seller Representative Specialist. All these initials means to you is that I have a very particular set of skills that make buying a home a dream for people like you. If you choose to work with me, I will hunt down your dream home. I will help you find it. I will help. I'm sorry. I screwed it up. I will hunt down your dream home. I will hunt down your dream home. I will help you find it, and I will help you buy it. Sound good? Thank you very much for that. And I apologize for screwing that up. Nick, go ahead and take it away. I'll let you introduce yourself here.
What's going on, everyone? Like I said before, for those of us who joined us a few minutes behind, thanks for joining us. Quick story, you guys can all see what we have here on the screen, but quick story, what's not on here and why I got into the mortgage industry is when I bought my first home, I didn't have anybody like Mark or like myself, and I had a terrible experience. And it motivated me to get into the business. I felt that I could do this and do it at a much higher level. And that was many years back now, and a lot of families and people helped. And as of this year, I made it into the top 7% of loan originators nationwide. So top 7% in production for the country, which I just got that accolade like last week. So that's why it's not in here, but I'm pretty proud of that one.
Awesome. Congratulations. I tell you, man, Nick is a hustler. He has done more than the average deals as far as other lenders that I've worked with before. So he definitely knows what he's doing, and he gets the deals done, which is the most important thing. So let me go on to the next slide here. Go. All right, so we're going to talk about, quickly, like I said, we're going to start off with the 10,000-foot overview. We're going to talk about the steps of home ownership. The first step you've already taken. You've come to this class so you can learn everything. And the second step would be to get your loan pre-approved with Nick. Then you'll be house hunting, hopefully with me. And then at the end, you'll be moving into that dream home finally. So now some of the loan types that Nick is going to be discussing will require you to take some classes from Fannie Mae. So if you guys want to take a screenshot of this or just jot down this link here, www.fanniemae.com/education. That's where you can actually go ahead and take the classes that you'll need to be approved for certain types of government loan types. All right. So let's move on to some of the mistakes that you could be making as a home buyer. And mistake number one is your credit score is not what you think. Is that right, Nick?
Yes, yes, lots of misconceptions around credit score. If anybody has, you don't have to put your credit score in the chat, but if anyone has an idea of what they think their credit score is, put a one in the chat. Just a simple one. Good. Abigail, Delaney, Greg, one.
A lot of
So
people have a general idea. Yep.
yeah, which is great. It is a good place to start, right? So a big one, right? And you can see it right here on the screen. Credit karma. Okay, maybe where you guys are getting that idea of what your credit score looks like, or when you log into your banking app or credit card app, you see a credit score there. Okay, which is a good place to start. But when you are applying for a mortgage, right, to buy a home, I'm going to see something much different than what you see. And I don't mean score wise, right? Sometimes the score will be different, right? It'll never be the same as what you see, right? But when you're looking at your credit score, whether it's on any of the things that I mentioned before, it is what is known as a consumer credit score. You are seeing a consumer version of your credit score. Okay, it is not a full detailed history of your credit, which is what is required in order to get a mortgage. Okay. So you may see 750, I may see 730, or I may see 780. Okay. It's going to be very, very specific to you and your credit makeup. Okay. So you want to talk to somebody like me to make sure you are getting an accurate idea of your credit score and how that correlates to you getting a mortgage.
All right, so let's go over really quick some of the different common mortgage types that are out there, Nick.
Yep. So we have starting off, one of the most common conventional loans, okay, is a conventional loan. This is for people typically with a higher credit score, okay? You can technically get a conventional loan with a credit score, if you can see down here, 620, okay, technically speaking. But what I would recommend, right, if you're in that range, you're probably going to be better off in another loan program that we're going to get to in a second. But conventional loans, so a lot of people think that I'm a first-time home buyer, I can't use a conventional loan. That is not the case. A conventional loan actually has the lowest down payment percentage of any other loan program, believe it or not.
Right.
Second most second most popular loan out there, okay, is an FHA loan. Now, FHA loans you may think are for first-time home buyers only. Okay, I get this question a lot is, I'm not a first-time home buyer. Can I still use an FHA loan? Yes, you can. Okay, it is not for only first-time home buyers. Okay, you can still use an FHA loan if you're buying your second home. There's just certain restrictions around it. But what FHA does that conventional does not is it allows more flexibility mostly from a credit perspective, but also from a debt to income perspective. Okay. And you'll see down here, Mark, if you can go back to that,
Sorry.
down payment as low, it's okay. Down payment as low as 3.5%. Your conventional loan down payment minimum is 3%. So slightly less, just a 0.5% less. Okay. But FHA is just more flexible for qualifying purposes. You can go ahead, Mark.
Okay. Yep.
VA loans, this is going to be for veterans, either active duty or veterans, and in some cases, surviving spouses of veterans. Now, a huge advantage to VA loans is there is no mortgage insurance. Okay. So anytime when you're buying a home and you're putting less than 20% down, you have something called mortgage insurance. Now, back in the day, mortgage insurance got a bad rap because the cost of it and it was hard to get rid of. no longer the case. Okay, mortgage insurance is much, much more affordable, and there's very strict guidelines in place that say when it needs to be removed or how it can be removed. Okay, for you, the consumer getting a mortgage. Okay, but VA, if you're putting less than 20% down, still don't have mortgage insurance, and it has a lot of flexibility when it comes to credit as well. Okay, so it's similar to an FHA loan because they're both government-backed loans. So their guidelines, okay, or for qualifying credit, debt to income, are very similar.
Oh, we got
USDA
USDA.
loans.
Hmm.
Has anyone heard of a USDA loan? Put a 2 in the chat if you have. If you have not, that is okay.
Looks like I got a few of them.
Awesome. You guys have been doing some homework. USDA loans are for um, areas that are a little bit more like country-like, more space, okay? But you may be surprised that some areas are USDA eligible, meaning when you're buying a home, if you want to use a USDA loan or if that's the best fit for you, the area you're buying a home in, this is a big one for USDA, needs to be USDA eligible. Okay. Not all areas in Connecticut are USDA eligible. Now, what would be an example of that? Usually, your bigger cities, inner cities, right, are not going to be USDA eligible. But there's also places, yes, Abigail, there is a map on the website that you can look this stuff up. 100% you are correct. Gold star for that one.
Yeah.
Um, but places like, just for example, off the top of my head, because I was helping somebody, a home buyer looking in this area recently, Guilford, Connecticut, kind of a small little shoreline town, kind of packed with houses, right? But that is a USDA eligible town. Now, there are some awesome first-time homebuyer programs given through the state of Connecticut. You guys may have heard of some of them. Probably the most popular one and the most beneficial one is going to be what's called your CHFA time to own loan program. Okay, you can see it right down here. There are other ones, right? If for some reason the time to own isn't the best fit for you, there are other options. But it is definitely the most beneficial. What that loan program does is it gives you up to $25,000 to put towards your down payment and closing costs. Okay, so the state of Connecticut will actually, they don't give you the money, right? But it works through the loan process where, let's say you needed $40,000 total, right? Or we'll use $50,000 total for down payment, closing costs, attorney fees, all of that, right? The state of Connecticut, as long as you qualify, will give you 25 of that to cover. So now you'd only need to bring the $25,000 to closing versus the 50. Okay. And it is a forgivable loan over 10 years. You do not need to, there's no interest on it, there's no payments on it. 10% of the loan amount of that $25,000 gets forgiven each year. Okay, which is awesome because you're not paying interest on it. You can go to the next one, Mark.
Well, the
These are a few of the other ones, right? Now, I'm going to group these together where the amount you may be able to get if you qualify could be larger than the $25,000 that Time Tone offers. But in these programs, you're paying, let's say this $28,000 here, you're paying it back with interest. So it's added on to your monthly payment. So if your payment is your regular payments, $2,500 a month, but then you're going to have an extra payment on this $28,000 at a 1% interest rate, but it's principal and interest. So you'd be paying it back over 10 years, 20 years, or 30 years. Okay, so that's why sometimes, right, these may not be as beneficial, but there's still a good place for them to help people if time to own is not a good fit. All good, Mark.
Thank you. All right, so I'm going to cover a couple of things here with the buyer responsibilities, because I'm sure you guys are probably wondering, where you're going to start, what you're going to be responsible for as you go through this process. And I apologize about the red lines on the screen here. I don't know how they have appeared. I don't know how to get rid of them, but hopefully we can just look past those. So first things first is going to be the escrow deposit. So when you're making an offer on a home, you're going to actually put down a certain amount of money to give the seller some security, so that way when you're on the market, so that way they'll be able to take the home off the market with some confidence. So typically it's about 1% of your purchase price. You can put down more if you want to, but typically if you're only going to put about 3 to 3.5% down, you really don't want to put too much down. Sometimes it can be as low as $1,000. It's especially if you're buying like a HUD home. That only requires a very minimal down payment. But typically those are not going to be homes that you would probably purchase, because most of those homes need a lot of work. And if you're going to be buying one of those, you're probably going to be buying with a renovation loan, and that covers some different that requires some more hoops for you guys to jump through. So once you go under contract for a home, however, you are probably going to want to inspect the home, which is going to be somewhere between like $400 to $1,000. It depends on the size of the home. It also depends on what goes into that inspection report. First of all, the main bulk of the report is the home inspection itself, which is where they're going to look at the home's structural systems. They're going to look at the mechanical systems and various other things that they can actually see. Obviously, a home inspector is not going to be able to look behind a wall, or open up a wall, or to look behind there. That's just not feasible. Some inspectors do offer some infrared scans, which are helpful at times, but again, that adds to the cost of the home inspection. The next 3 items are all optional, but for number 2, the wood destroying insect report. Anytime you get a government loan like an FHA or a VA or a CHFA loan, you are going to get one of these, or you're going to have to. They do require you to get that report. With a VA loan, the seller has to actually pay for it. It's not out of your pocket. Third thing is the radon test. If the home has a basement, especially if it has a finished basement, or if it has something that you're probably going to look to finish in the future, I would definitely recommend getting that test done, because that's going to test for this odorless and colorless gas called radon, which can cause cancer in people if exposed for too much. There are some other specialized tests that we can do, especially if you're buying a home with well water. If you're buying a home with a septic system, you're definitely going to want to get those things checked out. And a bunch of other things. You can test for asbestos if you want. You can test for a whole bunch of things. So and then finally, once we actually get through the home inspection process, we negotiate that with the seller. Then you're going to go and order the home appraisal as part of your loan application process. This is also another non-refundable expense, because this is you're asking someone to perform a service for you. So the home inspection report, whether you choose to go forward with the transaction or not, that is not refundable to you. And then once we get through the home inspection, if you do go ahead and order the appraisal, that is also a non-refundable expense. So let's say if the home, for example, let's say you're buying a $400,000 home, but it only appraises for $390,000. So then we'd have to talk about some strategies then to decide whether you want to continue with that purchase or not. Given the facts that you're going to actually probably have to kick in some more money out of pocket to actually come up with the difference between the appraisal and the purchase price. All right. So let's move on to, and also too, we mentioned earlier that we know that making expenses can be a burden for you guys, which is why one of the bonuses that we're going to be offering tonight is a free $500 credit towards your home inspection and a $500 credit towards your appraisal. So the first 10 people who click on this booking link right here, you can just click on that and book an appointment with me so we can discuss your home buying journey going forward. You guys will get those credits if we choose to go ahead and try to help you find a home. All right,
Mark. Yes. Mark, real quick, can you mute Elaine?
Yes, we'll do. Sorry about that, Elaine. All right. So let's go on to the next mistake, which is, oh, so no, we're going on with the what you can and can't use for down payment and closing costs. Nick, take it away.
Lot, a lot of options for how you can come up with your down payment and closing costs. There's been some big news recently around this first one right here about now it's not official yet, right? There's still work to be done, and we'll see. But the details still need to be worked out. But you can actually use your 401k towards to put towards down payment and closing costs when you're buying a home. Now, typically there's two ways. If you want to mute Elaine again, Mark.
I got you.
Typically there's two ways, right? You can take a loan or you can withdraw. Now, traditionally, if you withdraw that money, it is a taxable event. Okay, I'm not a CPA, right? So I can't give you tax advice, but you can consult your accountant on that. But it becomes a taxable event if you withdraw it. Where if you take a loan, that is not a taxable event. Okay, so if you're able to do the loan against your 401k, traditionally it works out better for you in the long run, right? Where they're trying to change the rule now, where you can actually take the withdrawal and not be penalized for taking that withdrawal. Okay, which would be huge to helping people buy more real estate, whether first-time home buyers, investors, etc. Okay. Second one, gift funds. You can get gift funds from family, friends. Okay, it just needs to be documented correctly. You can liquidate stocks, bonds, credit card. You cannot use, but there's a little hack for this. So if you guys want to write down 1 point for tonight, you can actually pay your homeowner's insurance up front on a credit card, and that'll reduce how much you need to bring to close when you go to close on the home. Okay, so just a little hack for you guys there, if needed, right? Personal loans, no, right? You can't get a loan to get a loan, right? Crypto is becoming more available to use for down payment and closing costs as that progresses. So that is allowed. Okay. A big one though, cash, right? Yes, as long seasoning, meaning it can be in your account. It just needs to be in your account for a certain period of time, your bank account. But the day before closing, we can't just take $20,000 from under the mattress or the sock drawer and bring it to the closing table and say, here's the money. Unfortunately, it does not work that way. It's something called the Patriot Act that is taken very, very seriously. That has to do with money laundering and terrorism, right? I know it sounds kind of intense. I don't make the rules, but it is taken seriously.
Actually, there are some additional rules coming down the pike too. I just heard about this today, about March 1st with the what was it, the FinCEN guidelines. So now they're actually, if you're actually going to try to purchase something using an LLC, they're actually going to require you to name the people who are a member of that LLC. So it's not going to affect too many of you guys here, but it's basically it's kind of targeted more toward like foreign buyers with that kind of thing. But yeah, there are some more rules coming down the pike regarding that as well.
Yep, some changes ahead.
Yeah.
So quick example for you guys, okay? This is with an FHA loan, okay? FHA loan was one of the products we covered at the beginning, right? So let's say if you have a purchase of 400,000 and your minimum down payment is 3.5% of that, okay? This upfront MI cost, this is not a cost to you out of pocket, okay? It is a requirement by FHA. It gets built into your loan amount, right? Now, let's say you're going to use down payment assistance. Any one of the down payment assistance programs we touched on before, okay, whatever is going to be the best fit for you. Okay, if I can kind of give you one piece of advice that sticks with you tonight is mortgages are very, very specific to you. Just because your friend did one thing or your mom or dad did one thing, or cousin, right? Their financial scenario is always going to be different than yours. And what is the best fit for them may not be the best fit for you. Okay. So just a quick piece of advice there. But let's say you're using a down payment assistance program, that's going to reduce what you need to bring, okay, out of your pocket or out of your bank account. And that would leave you with much, much less cash to close, as you can see in this red number down here. Okay, so you're going from tens of thousands of dollars that you need to bring to the closing table to well under $10,000. Okay, which is much, much more manageable, lowering the barrier of entry to be able to buy a home. Okay, which is huge.
Okay, let's go on to mistake number 2, not getting pre-approved for your mortgage.
Yes, unfortunately, still a mistake that Mark, I'm sure you see all the time as well, but I just see constantly, right? And I think part of it is just out of excitement. You start looking at homes on any of the websites online, right? And you want to go see it, and you click some buttons, and you don't call Mark, which you should, to go see that home, and the first thing he's going to tell you is get a pre-approval. So I think a lot of it is just more about excitement, which isn't a terrible thing, but it doesn't allow you to get an idea of what you can actually afford. So what I see is people end up falling in love with a home, and even if they can qualify for it, right? Like I can write you the mortgage to get it, but it's going to put you in a bad financial position, okay? Which I wouldn't let you do anyways. I mean, ultimately it's your decision, but I will obviously advise against it if it's not going to put you in a good financial position for the long run. Okay, so what does an actual pre-approval look like, right? From a kind of general overview. We are going to look at your credit from the 3 credit bureaus here. Okay, so we get your credit from all 3 credit bureaus, okay, which gives us like a comprehensive look at your credit. We're going to look at your income, verify your employment. We're going to look at pay stubs, W-2s, tax returns, okay, all of this to verify your income and employment, right? Assets, any bank accounts you have, 401k, investment accounts, we're going to look at those to determine how much money you have that you can put towards down payment and closing, right? Now, Mark, do you want to put all of that money so you have $100 left in your bank account after closing?
No.
Heck no. Definitely not, right? You want to be able to have some money set aside after you close on the home because life happens. You should have an emergency fund, right? That way, if anything does happen, you have money left over. And the last piece of your pre-approval is showing you what different monthly payments look like, down payment amounts, all of that stuff. So you are shopping and looking at homes with Mark from a place of education.
So here are some do's and don'ts as to how you can win with your loan pre-approval.
Yes. The do's, right? I'm gonna go through the don'ts, right? Because these can cause some big problems. I'm not gonna go through all of them, but when you are going through the pre-approval process, do you would you open up a credit card or should you not open up a new credit card? You should not open up a new credit card. Okay. You don't want to take out any new debt. You don't want to make any big purchases. A big one is changing jobs. Okay. You want to, if you can avoid it, you want to change jobs. Now, we get it. Things happen. Life happens. But when stuff like that comes up, you would consult, right? Myself, Mark, and that way we can properly advise you on if you do need to make a change to your financial picture, how do we do so without affecting your pre-approval or your home buying transaction if you're already under contract.
Yeah, like the job thing, I mean, it's not too big of a deal if you're changing like jobs in the same industry or like the same
I
type
don't
of
like your
job.
girlfriend.
But if you're kind of like going through like let's say you're like a chemical engineer one day and then you're a bus driver the next, that kind of would be a huge hiccup there for your mortgage loan approval.
Yep. Yeah. Switching jobs within the same industry is usually okay. May add a little bit more paperwork and work on your end, right? And a little bit more time added. Um, but if it can be avoided, it's usually easier that way.
Okay, so let's move on to mistake number 3, using a lender versus a bank. I know everyone loves their banker, but Nick, you want to talk about why that might not be such a good idea when you're actually getting a mortgage?
Yes, banks are great if you want to open up a checking account, savings account, even a high yield savings account, right? Some banks have really, really good programs with that, okay, where you can earn a lot more interest on your money than your regular checking or savings account, but they are not good at doing mortgages, okay? The biggest reason banks, like your banks that you see in plazas, your Bank of Americas, your Wells Fargos, the reason they do mortgages is because they want you to have a checking and a savings account with them. Okay. That is the biggest reason they do mortgages. All right. They they do not prioritize them. And one of the biggest differences is just specializing it to you. Okay. With the big bank, you are a number, right? You are not a person. It's the unfortunate reality, right? But that is why I have a job, right? Because what I do, I don't offer you a checking account, a savings account, any sort of investment account. Okay. What I can do is help you get a mortgage that fits you, right? Get you the best mortgage you possibly can so you can then go and buy your home with Mark, right? Nobody wants a mortgage, but everybody wants a home, right? So you might as well get the mortgage that fits your needs the best rather than just being a number and getting any mortgage that you qualify for.
And not only that too, but when you're working with a big bank, I mean, one week you could be working with Tom, and then the next week you could be working with Dick, and then the third week you could be working with Harry. So you don't really have anybody that's really accountable to you as the buyer. You know, when you're hiring Nick, you're going to get him from the start of the process all the way to the closing. You're not going to be talking to anybody else. So, he's going to make sure that, nothing gets dropped along the way.
Correct. Yep, very good point. Now, I'm not going to go through each and every one of these, right? But this is just to give you guys a bit of an idea of what the process looks like. Okay. If you were to, hey, like, okay, well, Nick, Mark, like, thank you so much for the information, but like, what does it look like for me to actually get pre-approved? Right. First thing is onboarding, right? So getting on a phone call with me, going over where you are right now financially, what you're looking to do, okay? And that is either going to be in the form of like a phone call, a Zoom call, we can meet in person, okay? From there, you're going to fill out an application, provide the documents that we touched on earlier, W-2s, pay stubs. We're going to look through all of that. Underwriting is going to evaluate that. And then we are going to get you fully pre-approved. Okay. And then we're going to go over something that's called a mortgage plan, which shows you different loan programs, different down payment amounts, different purchase prices. That way you are comfortable with, okay, so I know if I'm buying a house at 350,000 with 10% down, right? 10% down payment, I'm comfortable with that monthly payment. But if I go up to 400,000 with that 10% down, I'm not comfortable with that monthly payment, right? You want to know that so you're not going to look at that $450,000 house and wanting to buy it, but then find out too late that that monthly payment does not work, or you might qualify for it, but it doesn't fit your needs or your family's needs. Okay. So that is just a kind of a brief overview of how step by step the pre-approval process would go with me.
Slide.
Yep.
Okay.
Now, in Connecticut, right, it's simple supply and demand. Okay. There are a lot of people that want to buy homes, but there's not as many homes as people that want to buy. Okay. So you have a lot of demand, less supply. So one of the biggest things when you're buying a home is how does your team, right, being me and Mark, or at least somebody like us, create leverage for you. Okay. And if you're working with somebody currently that's not talking to you as a buyer of how do you create leverage with your offer, you should ask them those questions, right? Or think about finding a new team, to, to put it bluntly. Okay. Because it is a competitive market in Connecticut, even though it's wintertime, it is still competitive. All right. So a big one, right? First, number one, money talks, right? So you do need to be placing competitive offers. The highest offer isn't always the one that wins, okay? But you got to be among the top, okay? That is the reality. 3-day inspection period, I think Mark would say that's probably a little bit too quick, but the point being a quick inspection period, right? And Mark is the best person to see what that means, what timeline is going to work best for that specific property. Okay. Quick loan terms. So being able to close a loan quickly. This is not something I touched on with the big bank versus lender, but I can close a loan, a mortgage, and a whole, close on your home, close on your mortgage, right? It all happens at once in 15 days. A bank is going to take you 60 days, 45 if you're lucky. Okay, now I don't strive to have every transaction be 15 days. It is a very quick process, especially if it's your first time going through it. But if it's going to be the difference between you winning the offer and not winning the offer, we can get it done. Okay.
Yeah, anything we can do to shorten that seller timeline for them, because a lot of times these sellers are, kind of under the gun as to when they need to move. With them, having a quick loan process definitely helps in that regard. Sometimes the sellers may take longer to close, but the ones that need to move quick, it's definitely helpful to have somebody like Nick on your side. So
Yeah, just having the option to be able to offer it.
mhm.
Right? Mark is the one that he structures the offer and finds out what's important to the seller. And then we coordinate together on how we can best structure your offer. Okay. Part of that is talking about appraisal contingency or mortgage contingencies. We're not going to get into the details of those today, but doing so, potentially waiving those contingencies in a safe way, the least, the less contingencies you have in your offer, the more likely you are to win that offer. Now, there is a right and a wrong way to do it. We're not going to get into the details of it, but it should be a discussion that's had in your pre-approval process. You can go to the next
We can
one,
definitely
Mark.
talk about that during the consult. Yeah.
Yes.
Ready to move to the next one, or?
Yep.
Right. So to show these folks what they're losing, Nick, if they continue to rent for years and years and years.
Yeah. So it's always a big topic of conversation. Should I rent? Should I keep renting? Should I buy? Right? The simple answer is you should buy a home when you are ready to buy a home. Okay. But you want to have that determined by people who are in it every day. Okay. I heard something recently. It's like if you need surgery or if you break a bone, where are you going to go? You're going to go to a doctor or a surgeon, right? And I'm not saying I'm a doctor or a surgeon by any means. That's where I would go. But you want to be able to make that determination and get that advice, not from, Uncle Jim or Aunt Lisa, right? Get it from a set of professionals that can give you an honest evaluation of your situation. Okay. So just a quick snippet here. If you looked at a $500,000 home in 2024 this is like an FHA loan scenario, that same home in 2025 would have appreciated, okay, meaning gone up in value, which costs you more to buy, almost $32,000. That same home in 2026 appreciates again, okay, goes up in value again to about $565,000. Now, if you are a homeowner, this is awesome, right? You're gaining equity by doing nothing, just owning the home, right? But if you are in a good financial position to buy a home and you're sitting on the sidelines, as you can see, it's costing you a lot of money. I think, Mark, if you have anything to add on that, but if you're in a good position to buy,
I was actually just kind of curious with you folks on the webinar tonight. Could you just put in the chat, like roughly what you're paying right now for rent every month, so we can get an idea as to what that average is, because that's going to be that's going to kind of figure that could help you maybe make the decision as to whether or not you want to buy it or not. We got 2,200, 2,200, 1,720. got 1350, it's got 2500. So yeah, it looks like the average NIC is still around 2000 a month, somewhere around there. So
Mhm.
if you take 2000 a month times 12 months, that's $24,000 for 1 year. How many of you guys have been renting for 5 years or more? Put a one in the chat if you've been doing that. Yeah, see, that's a lot of money that you've been paying to your landlord instead of paying to yourself by waiting to buy. So if
Great
you
point.
as soon as you guys can get yourselves pre-approved and we can find you a home, it would be a great idea for you guys to find a home just so you can build that net worth for yourself.
I saw someone in the chat said freeloading at my parents' house. That is, there's no better way to save money. I don't know
Yeah.
exactly who it was. It's a little ways up, but it's a great way to save money for a down payment. So nothing
Hmm.
wrong with that. I did that for years too before I bought my first home.
Yeah. Nice. All right. So let's go on to mistake number four, and that's buying directly from a builder without realtor representation. If you're going to be, a lot of you guys, are probably going to be curious about, like new construction homes out there. The last thing you really want to do is to not bring your realtor along, because let's say, for example, that you see an incredible offer out there, like for closing cost assistance. A lot of builders are offering a lot of closing cost assistance programs out there, but that really is tied to like maybe a loan or an interest rate that might not work for you in the long run. So if you go ahead and visit one of these builders open houses, you definitely don't want to do it without your realtor, because if you go up there and they say, "Oh, hi, how are you?" All we need you to do is just sign in here with your name, your phone number, and your email so we can keep in contact with you. Well, just guess what just happened? They became the procuring cause, and now a buyer's agent cannot help you with that transaction. So that's something that you definitely want to avoid. If you're going to go if you're going to go visit one of these builders open houses, bring your agent along with you, because the realtor works for you and the sales agent works for the builder. They're going to try to get the best loans and terms and prices, for the builder. That's not going to really be, maybe it's something that you want to do. So, yeah, and even new homes have problems. Even I can't tell you how many new construction homes that have had like issues within the first 6 months. So, when you bring a realtor along, especially if you're buying a home that's not yet completed, we can help you make the best decisions financially as you build. They're gonna have like tons of different options. They're gonna try to push on you probably a lot of those options that are like sitting there because nobody really wants them. So we're gonna go over exactly all the finishes you can have, all the flooring you can have, all the different types of options they can install in the home to really make sure that it fits your needs and it actually is going to make you money in the long run. And also, a realtor is going to be knowledgeable about what to look for during those inspections and those final walkthroughs, like I said. Moving on to the next one. Now, if this is sounding good to you folks so far, go ahead and you can go ahead and book your consultation with me. I see that a few people have already done so. So we still have some open slots for that. So, like I said, the first 10 people to book will receive up to $1,000 towards their upfront costs when they're purchasing a home. All right. Mistake number five, skipping the home inspection. We kind of touched on this briefly earlier, but this is something you definitely don't want to do because you don't want to end up like Tom Hanks and Shelley Long in the movie The Money Pit. Now, obviously, that was an extreme example, but I have seen a few that are not too far off. So, in my 20 years. So what are some of the costs of skipping that home inspection? You end up purchasing a home where you're unaware of some major or even some minor issues. You would lose some of your negotiating power with that seller. I mean, even if you're buying a home, a lot of times, I'm seeing a lot of, sellers asking for as is offers. Uh, that's great. And we can actually, I would, totally feel comfortable with writing that. But once we actually get to that home inspection, if a seller is willing to actually, if something comes up during that home inspection and it's kind of major, the seller will most likely try to work through that issue, because if they don't, then what happens is if the deal does fall through and then they have to put it back on the market, guess what they have to do with that major issue? Now they have to disclose it to all the future buyers that are coming down the pike, which could impact the future price that they get for that home. So now you also risk some non-structural safety issues such as mold, radon, carbon monoxide, and pest damage. Like I said, there are extra tests that you can do for all that stuff to make sure that your family is safe. You would lose any bargaining power with your insurance company. A lot of times now we're seeing insurance companies actually asking for a copy of that home inspection report when you purchase a home because they want to know what some of the issues are too, because they want to figure out exactly if you're going to need a new roof, if you're going to need to make some changes to your electrical systems, if you have like asbestos in the house, especially, they're going to want to know some of those environmental issues. So that could end up saving you a lot of money or costing you a lot of money, depending on on what's found there. So I mean, typically, especially with like homes built in like the 1920s or 1910s, a lot of insurance companies are going to assume that there may still be some knob and tube wiring in the property. But let's say the sellers may have upgraded all that electrical in the 80s or 90s, but insurance company's not going to know that unless they have a copy of that home inspection to show them. You'll also miss knowing some of your future repair costs. Most of the inspectors that I work with will actually give you a sheet that gives you approximate costs as to what some of these systems will cost to either repair or replace in the future. Plus, you'd be oblivious to illegal or no-code additions and remodels. The last thing you want to do is have happen is, let's say you're buying a $400,000 house where they put an addition above the garage, but it wasn't permitted. So instead of having a 2,000 square foot house, now you're buying a home that's officially 1,500 square feet, and guess what? It's probably not going to appraise. So that could throw a monkey wrench into the works. So unless your dad or a cousin is a licensed and insured inspector, you kind of want to leave this to the professionals. These people are going to be licensed, they're going to be insured, and they're going to belong to ASCII, which is the American Home Inspectors Association, AHSI. So those are all the people that I will work with. So. Mistake number 6, not using a full-time professional realtor. You'd be surprised as to how many part-time agents there are out there. I mean, I just looked at the MLS recently. We have about 18,000 registered realtors on the MLS, but quite a few of them are actually only part-time agents. And in fact, about half of them did not even close a single transaction last year. So you're not really getting, I mean, it's kind of spooky to know that you had a 1 in 2 chance of dealing with an agent that did not do a deal last year. So that's something that you definitely want to avoid. And it's something that one of the reasons why you wanted to use a full-time realtor, because a full-time realtor,
Mark,
they'll make sure that yeah, sure.
To Mark's point, so I do a lot of open houses on weekends. I partnered with Mark. We do a lot of open houses together, or other real estate agents I'm partnered with. And I talk to a lot of buyers that some of them have been looking to buy a home, and they're qualified, right? They're good to get a mortgage. They've been looking to buy a home for years, right? Usually, and now that who are you working with a real estate agent, and I'll look up the real estate agent to see who they're working with. And to Mark's point, they've done one transaction in the last 2 or 3 years. That's right. So working with somebody that is in the business every single day, advocating for you, and that actually knows how to do that is going to be the difference between, potentially searching for years to having a much more realistic timeline.
Yeah, like the perfect example, Nick. One of the listings that I'm going to be closing on soon myself. The buyer's agent on the other end. This is his first transaction ever.
Your job's probably a lot harder on this deal, huh?
Yeah, actually, no, not really. I mean, he is a little more cautious than most agents, which is great. So he's actually getting coached well by his broker, which is good. But it's good to see. But like I said, first, a full-time realtor will make sure that the process goes smoothly and as turbulence-free as possible. You want a realtor with a positive track record, somebody who's going to, and actually now a buyer brokerage agreement is actually a requirement throughout the country, no matter where you go. Connecticut has always been a buyer brokerage state since 1996, but now the rest of the country is on board with this to make sure that the buyer is represented. Because for many years, the buyers that were going out looking at houses way back in the day, they were making the assumption that the listing agent was also going to be helpful to them. But what they did not realize was that the listing agent actually worked for the seller, and that all the personal information and all the financial information they were giving to the realtor, well, they were just forwarding it right along to the seller, and they were using it to negotiate against them, which is why we came up with buyer agency in the 90s to begin with. Now, a professional realtor can also advise you on all the different lenders you can use, the communities, the insurance companies, surveys, title companies, and more. I mean, that could be the difference of, saving you several thousands of dollars for people who know what they're doing and they don't make mistakes. And also, a full-time successful realtor knows all the aspects of the transaction from start to finish, so we can advise you on your options and tell you exactly what to expect when buying a home. In fact, I put together this little biopoly board for those of you who played Monopoly here as a kid. Put a one in the chat if you did that. Um, so I went through and I put this on a little biopoly board, and I'll just go over this, through the steps real quick. First step, of course, is the pre-approval. Then we're going to go find you that home. You're going to make an offer on that home. And then once that offer gets accepted, you're going to start that application process with Nick. We're going to go through and make sure we get the contract and the agreement of sale to all parties that are needed. Then we're going to go into that home inspection that we were talking about, and we're going to find out what's wrong with the home and what decide. And at that point, you'll be making one of three decisions: accept the home as is, walk away from it, or we negotiate with the seller, and we're negotiate either them making the repairs themselves or them to give you a credit towards some of those repairs. That's a very popular option right now because a lot of times buyers want to do the work themselves. But then again, you also have to watch too is whether you're getting any lender credits to make sure that you're not going over any of those percentage thresholds.
The negotiation process is where you want somebody like Mark. Well, Mark, based on my experience, in your corner. He is awesome. I mean, he literally has a I think more than one, right,
Yeah.
Mark?
Yeah. Mhm.
Negotiating certification. Not a lot of people put as much time into, um, mastering their craft. So hats off to you, Mark, on that.
Thank you. So then once we get through that inspection period, we order the appraisal. In the meantime, the processor for the loan, the underwriter is going to, actually the loan is going to be processed. We get the appraisal report back and we'll make some decisions then as to, hopefully the home does appraise and we don't have any issues. If not, then we'll work on what we can do to solve those issues. The process will continue through underwriting where, next, guys in the background will, dot every I and cross every T to make sure that everything is verified. Then the lender will issue a mortgage commitment letter. That may end up generating a couple more things for you to do as a buyer. You may have to submit a couple of additional documents, a couple of explanations for this or that. And then we go through, and then while that's happening, we're also going to have the attorney order the title report. That's going to make sure that the property has clean and marketable title, which means it can be transferred to another buyer. We're not going to have, this is what they'll typically do is they'll search through the title history for the last 40 years to make sure that there's no Aunt Edna, as a secondary homeowner out there who doesn't own who co-owns the property but doesn't live there. So it's sometimes does happen, and strangely enough, Nick, it happened on an REO property, which which we're finally going to be closing. Nick, we finally got approval from the probate court from the other party, so thank God we're going to get through that one. Then we go through the homeowner's insurance policy. You're going to purchase that, and then once we have all our ducks in a row, the lender will issue what's called the clear to close, and at that point you'll be contacting all your utility companies, your magazine subscriptions, and all that to make sure that you get your stuff going to your new address. On the day of or the day before the closing, or as close to that closing time as possible, we're going to do that final walkthrough to make sure that the home is being delivered to you in the condition that you were expecting it to be delivered. And then we get to the closing table where you sign all the closing documents. And then congratulations, I hand you those keys and you can start moving into your brand new home.
Can we put either a yes or a no if you know what what is the purpose of an appraisal? Put a yes or a no in the chat. Got a couple yeses. Nice. Okay.
So
Perfect. I got one no. A lot of yeses. Main purpose of an appraisal. Okay. It is called an appraisal inspection, not to be confused with a home inspection. The main purpose of an appraisal, this is ordered by your lender. Okay. So my company orders the appraisal. An actual person goes out to the property, and their job is to determine the value of the property to make sure that you are buying it for either the same value that is on your contract or above. Okay. And then if there's any glaring health and safety issues, they will note those. But the main priority is to determine the value by looking at the property and other comparable properties that have sold recently in the area. A big part of the process is the appraisal.
And the best part is if it actually appraises for more than your purchase price, congratulations, folks. You've already got some built-in equity into that property.
Correct. Yep.
Now, one of the reasons, now, again, I just want to finalize the point on, working with a professional realtor. I've identified like 90 points of turbulence on the buyer side of the transaction that I've seen over the years. And I'm not going to go over all these points. You folks just want to take a quick screenshot of this, but I just want you to notice something. Who is responsible for about 1/3 of the things that could go wrong during the transaction? Who can put that in the chat? Anyone notice who's, yep. Anyone notice who 1/3 of the things that can go wrong are generated by who? It's actually the buyer. Yep. So you as a buyer, if you guys can just make sure that you look at this first list of 32 things that could go wrong on your end and just don't do them, then Nick and I can worry about the other two columns and we can make sure that we can get that deal to close smoothly for you. All right.
We'll help make sure you're not doing these things also.
Exactly. Yes. So now, one thing that now Nick went through, some of his processes as it's how AFC mortgage is a little different. Here's how I'm a little different from all the other buyers agents out there. I actually have a system that will allow you to find off-market and pre-listed homes for you. It's called my Perfect Home Finder system. And here are the steps that I go through to do that. First of all, of course, you're going to get pre-approved with your mortgage, hopefully with Nick. Two, you then sign an exclusive buyer agency agreement with me so that I'm your exclusive realtor to help you find no matter what kind of property we're looking for. We identify exactly what a perfect home means to you. I'm going to take you through a questionnaire that's actually going to go through every single thing that you could possibly think of in a home. You don't have to answer every single question, but just answer the ones that are like most meaningful to you so that we can actually get the perfect home for you, not just for anybody. Then I go ahead and I put my proprietary marketing system into place to find those off-market and pre-listed homes. I will preview those homes for you to make sure that they do include everything that you want, because I don't want to waste your time or the seller's time either. I'll then work to write a win-win deal with the sellers, which will include my compensation. I don't know if you guys are aware, but ever since how the buyer's agent gets compensated has changed a little bit because of the lawsuit that was filed against NAR a couple of years ago now. But nowadays, I mean, the buyer was always responsible for the buyer's agent's commission, but typically what happened before was the listing agent's company would pay that commission. Well, now the listing agent is not allowed to pay it. It's actually either going to come out of the seller's pocket or it's going to come out of the buyer's pocket. Now, thankfully, a lot of sellers are still putting a lot of bait on that hook to make sure that people are coming to their homes to see them. But with the seller's market that we're in here in Connecticut, I am seeing a lot of sellers not willing to cover the entire cost. So they're willing to help out with a lot of it, but sometimes they're actually asking for the buyer to actually cough up a little bit, either like 0.5% or 1% on their side of the transaction. If we do get to that point, I will definitely let you know whether the seller's not willing to cover my entire fee or not, and then we can decide how to move forward from there. Now, if we do structure that win-win deal, I'll go ahead and I'll schedule a private tour for you to see the home to make sure that it actually meets up with your approval, and then we'll review that contract by the seller. And if you want to make any changes to it, we'll present those. And if everything looks good, you can sign the contract as written, and then we can go right to escrow. Guys, got any questions about anything about that? If you go ahead and put them in the chat.
What does going to escrow mean, Mark?
That means that we're under contract, and then we're going through the process of doing the home inspection. We're going to do the appraisal, and to go through the steps of actually going into of purchasing a home. So it's been about an hour. A lot of you folks were a little nervous before. How do you feel now? Do you feel a little more empowered? Do you feel hopeful? Are you kind of, tired of renting? Is there anything else that's holding you back? Any fears? Go ahead and let us know. But if not, we definitely invite you folks to book a consult. Even if you don't feel like you're entirely ready, go ahead and book a consult anyway, because we'll be able to answer a lot of those questions for you that you may have burning, that you may not want to, put out in the open here. So go ahead, and there's another link in the chat to do that. And a lot of you guys we've already gone through some of the questions there, but yeah, folks, it's still possible to actually own your home in 30 days or less. Especially if we find it within that first week, we get you, through the inspection process real quick. Nick can get you approved within 15 days, and we can actually get that to happen for you guys. So here's the link again, and the QR code again. But yeah, let's go through some Q&A. If you guys want to go ahead and unmute yourself or raise your hands, we can actually have some live Q&A. That'd be great. Samantha just asked a question. Yep, Nick answered that. Here's some other common questions that I typically get from other buyers. What if I still have a lease agreement? Can I buy? I noticed that some of you guys in the chat earlier were putting like some very low amounts for leases, like 1,000 or 1,300. Well, if you've got a landlord like that, and let's say you're still like 6 months left on that lease, well, chances are that landlord is probably going to let you out of that lease, because then he can probably charge market rate for that apartment now, which is probably closer to 2,000 a month. So that's something that I can definitely help you out with if you're having difficulty with the landlord about that. Definitely help them see the light on that. Is there a best time of year to buy? A lot of people ask me if there's a best time of year to buy. For that, I would say, well, is the best time for you to buy is when you're ready, willing, and able, and you have the need to actually get more space. If you can get yourself pre-approved and you have the needs if you're living in too small of a home or too small of an apartment, the best time would be immediately. So, how much should you save up for the down payment? Well, we already went through some of those options, Nick. You can save up as little as 3 or 3.5% down. I would typically save a little bit more than that if you could. So that way you can actually come up with some extra cash on the back end, especially if you need to cover like an appraisal gap. But Nick, you had an interesting strategy regarding covering an appraisal gap, right? You mentioned that in the last webinar that we did.
Yes, there is a strategy. If for some reason the house appraises lower than what you're purchasing it for, there's a strategy if you're putting 10% down or more, where you do not need to come out of pocket to cover the difference. Okay, so traditionally, if let's say you're buying a house for 400, it appraises for 390. Traditionally speaking, you got to come up with that $10,000, or Mark is going to negotiate to try to get the seller to meet you somewhere halfway, which usually reasonable sellers will do something. They're not going to cover the whole thing in most cases, but there is a way you can build like an appraisal gap into your strategy that does not cost you that $10,000 out of pocket. It doesn't cost you anything out of pocket. Okay, all it does is very slightly raise your monthly payment, right? But that is a something to go through on a consult, so we can go through it in detail just to make sure you fully understand it.
And then some of the closing costs that we have, typically your closing costs are going to be somewhere around like 3% on the loan, right? On the loan amount for your property purchase. And plus you're going to have like I said, those upfront, non-refundable costs, like your home inspection cost, your appraisal cost. Anything else you can think of, Nick, or?
Yeah, I would say between 3 and 4% is a good percentage. That's going to include anything that has to do with the loan, the mortgage, prepaid taxes and insurance. There's a lot of line items in your closing costs, but yeah, I would just say from like a broad overview, 3 to 4% is a good rule of thumb.
Oh, and it's something that you folks may not be aware of either. In a couple of towns do their taxes in arrears, like Meriden and Wallingford. So actually, you as a buyer will actually get a credit toward those taxes at the closing table. Most other towns, you actually have to refund the seller back for the taxes that they already paid. But in Meriden and Wallingford, they pay the taxes, in advance or in arrears. So that way, they actually give you a credit when you're actually buying the home. Of course, when you go on to sell it, then you'll have to give it back. It's, for somebody who's looking in the Meriden Wallingford area, that actually might make the difference between you being able to afford that home or shops for something else like in Southington or another town or Middletown. It may actually make a little bit of a difference for you. So. Lawyer fees, that's another typical closing cost. So you're basically going to be, that's typically around like $1,200 now for a closing. Most attorneys charge. They'll also charge you some additional title work that's going to be somewhere around $300 to $350 for a title insurance policy. Everybody has to carry a title insurance policy. I know that.
That's
Underwriting,
built
what does the underwriter
into
do? Oh,
that the
Nick, is
lawyer fees that Mark was talking about is built into that 3 to 4% we mentioned earlier. It's
Yep.
not in addition.
Yep. And then underwriting, Nick, you kind of covered what an underwriter does already, right?
An underwriter reviews the entirety of your application, your documents, everything having to do with the property. So Mark had mentioned it earlier, they kind of cross the T's, dot the I's, to make sure that you are fully qualified and that the property qualifies as well, right? They look at the entire transaction to make sure everything is on the up and up.
I don't know if you guys have, if there anybody here tonight that's actually owns a home currently. Can I buy a home and sell my current home at the same time? Yeah, we definitely can do that, and it's those are kind of like the fun transactions because then you got to make sure that everything's coordinated. So, we've never had an issue with that. I've always had my people, line up everything in on time and make sure that everyone can actually close at the same time or within a week or so because there's always some kind of issues that always comes up. But what happens if I change my mind after we've started the buying process? Well, like we said, there were a couple of contingencies that are written during an offer. A lot of people don't know this, but once a seller signs a contract, there's really no way for them to back out of it. But with a buyer, when you're buying a home, you have two main contingencies that help protect you. First is the home inspection contingency. Like I said, if we do find an issue that we were not aware of that is actually major, or you have a whole bunch of minor issues that you really may not want to tackle, well then you can use that as your option to change your mind about buying the home. Also, with the mortgage contingency, if we can't get the home to appraise, or if we can't reach an agreement with the seller as to how we're going to handle those issues, then that is another way where you actually would be able to back out of the property and you would actually get your deposit back. So, and then we can go ahead and chase something else. How do I know if I'm ready to buy? Well, if you can get yourself pre-approved, you are ready to buy. So you shouldn't really think too long and hard on that because, like I said, if every month that you're paying rent to that landlord, it's money flying out the window for you. Should you buy now instead of rent? Typically, well, that's a question that only really you can answer. I mean, if you anticipate yourself, living somewhere else, especially a different state, maybe in the next 6 to 12 months, you're probably not going to want to move forward with buying a home here because then you're going to have to sell it, and within the 2-year time frame where you can avoid some of those capital gains taxes. But if you're planning on staying in the area for at least like the next 4 or 5 years, definitely consider buying now instead of renting because, like I said, it's more money out the window. Can I buy a home with no money down? Well, Nick, you've kind of shown us how we can do some of that, especially if you're a veteran, you can definitely do it. And actually, if you're with that forgivable, time to own program, that actually will end up buying it with no money down eventually, right?
Sorry, I was answering a question in the chat, Mark.
Oh, sorry. So yeah, so I mean, if somebody's using that time to own program, eventually you can end up it can actually forgive that loan, and they'll end up buying it for no money down eventually at some point, right?
Yes.
Also, another question too: how can I raise my credit scores to qualify? Nick, you got some good tips here. I know that.
Yeah. So some general, like some really good tips to if you're looking to boost your credit score, there's a difference between like just kind of tips and tricks to raise your credit score and then actual credit repair, which I can help with as well. I'm partnered with an awesome credit repair company. It's all they do every day. That is more along the lines of kind of more extensive stuff, but some tips and tricks. One of them, you want to keep your, if you have credit cards, you use credit cards, you want to keep the balances on those credit cards. It's about 33%, at 33%. Okay. How much, basically meaning if your credit limit is $1,000, okay, you don't want the balance on your credit card to be over $350 or $333, right? So if your credit limit is $1,000, using that same example, and your balance is consistently $800 every month, that is going to hurt your credit score, right? But at the same time, if you keep it below that, about that 33%, it's going to help your credit score. Second, and a little trick here that does not obviously cost any money. That saves you from spending money. But another trick that does not cost any money, totally free. If you have credit cards, you can call your credit card company, or you can some credit cards you can do it on the app or online. You can request a credit limit increase. Okay, not to spend more money, right? But what that does is it separates your balance from your limit. So that's called your utilization ratio, if you're talking like mortgage credit terms, which also helps boost your credit score, right? Because you're widening the gap between those two. Common sense ones like just not missing payments. Missed payments are tough, right? They stay on your credit for a long time. Not to say if you do have missed payments on your credit report does not mean you cannot get a mortgage. Okay, so those are just kind of a couple like tips and tricks to help keep your credit score where it is, or boost your credit score.
Also, too, if you have like several different, if you're carrying balances on several different credit cards, let's say you're carrying like a little bit here, a little bit there, pay off some of those small ones. So that way you're only, because the fewer credit card payments you have going out, the less chances you have of missing one of those payments as well. So if, let's say if you, I try to keep most of my expenditures just like one credit card. So that way I'm just paying one credit card every month. But I own like 8 or 9 of them, but, kind of use like 2 or 3 at the most. But if we can keep it to like the fewer amount of credit cards you're actually making payments on, the better. I think that improves your score as well, because you reduce the actual chances of missing one of those payments.
You could also just put it on auto pay where you're paying the minimum payment every month. So that way, if you do miss it, so if you only make the minimum payment, you're gonna get charged interest, which is really high on credit cards, but it keeps you from missing that payment, right? And then you can go the next day and, make the whatever payment you do so you're not getting charged interest, but putting it on auto pay is super simple as well.
All right. So anybody else have any more questions? Go ahead and feel free to unmute yourself and you can ask us live, or you can just pop it in the chat. But if not, if you haven't booked your free consultation now, go ahead and click on that link, and we'll drop it again in the chat there. Thank you, Nick.
Yep.
And yeah, and even if you're worried about your household income, whether if you have questions about whether you're going to need a cosigner or not, go ahead and book a consult anyway. We'll be happy to answer all your specific questions to figure out exactly what you can do to actually get yourself into position where you're working, where you're actually able to purchase this year instead of waiting for another year and paying out all that money out the window. So Nick, I want to thank you for joining me tonight, and I want to thank everybody here for joining us. We had a great group tonight. Appreciate that, and that's pretty much it, folks. So thank you very much, and
My pleasure, Mark.
We'll see you guys at our appointments. For those of you who booked appointments, and if not, feel free to just text us anytime. You've got I think you'll have our contact information sent to you guys after through the webinar booking. So thanks to everyone for showing up tonight, and we'll see you another time, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anytime.
Good day.
Take care.
You too.